guys, it's me, Allie from bakingamoment.com. Thanks so much for clicking over today. I'm really excited to share this recipe with you. It's one of those classic French pastries, which I feel like we've been on a roll with them these last couple of weeks, so why not keep it going? We're gonna make choux pastry today, which is also sometimes called pâte à choux. Like I said, it's fancy and French, but the good news is it's really easy to make, and it's super versatile too. This is, if you're not familiar, this is the kind of pastry that you want to use for like eclairs and cream puffs and gougères and things like that. So really versatile, all kinds of different ways you can fill them, shape them, you name it. And just like a great thing to know how to do, just a good thing for a baker to have in their back pocket. So hello to everyone. I can see people are joining on Instagram. So hi Instagram people, thanks for checking in. I'm so glad you were able to click over and watch today. And I'm here with Jen, my assistant. She's behind the scenes as usual. So if you have any comments or questions, or you just want to say hello, just drop it in a comment, and we'll take a few minutes as we're going along to kind of go through and say hi to everybody and answer your questions. So welcome. Now let's talk about pâte à choux. Like I said, it's really pretty simple. It's one of those like magic of baking kind of recipes where you have these like super basic ingredients, but the way you put them together and the way that they're baked and shaped and all that sort of thing makes them like completely transforms them in the oven into something just so magical. So what we're gonna use for today as far as ingredients, we're gonna start with water and butter, a little bit of sugar and a little bit of salt, and then we're gonna add flour and eggs, and we're gonna put it all into a piping bag and pipe it out on baking sheets and bake it, and they're gonna puff up and become hollow inside, and they're just like lighter than air, so like sort of a little bit chewy, a little bit crisp on the outside, and then when you fill them, the filling and the pastry kind of meld together and they create this amazing textural experience, you know, like the contrast of the soft filling with the pastry is just like off the charts. It's so yummy. So let's get started. What do you say? I'm just gonna turn my little hot plate here. I'm gonna put it onto this thing. Really, it gets really hot. So I think I'm gonna do it on a pretty low heat, just because I know that like it really heats up a lot. So I'm gonna put my water in the pot, and I'm gonna add, it's a cup of water, and I'm gonna add the butter too. This is like such a strange way of making pastry. I always thought this is like no other pastry where you start with water and butter melted together in a pot. It's weird, right? But somehow it works. So I'm using unsalted butter, as always. In it goes, and that's just gonna melt together. And here, I'll throw in the sugar and the salt too. We're gonna do a teaspoon of just regular white sugar. They aren't super sweet, but just a little bit of sugar just to kind of make it a little more palatable. And a quarter teaspoon of kosher salt. So if you're using salted butter, definitely leave the salt out. You won't need it. But I bake exclusively with unsalted butter just because this way I can control the amount of salt that goes into the recipes. So while that's going, is there anybody I should say hi to? I see a lot of people commenting, especially on Instagram.
A lot of people joining,
okay,
which is most of what you're seeing. Joining or just waiting.
Well, welcome everyone. Thanks for clicking over. Again, we're making choux pastry, which is what you use to make cream puffs and eclairs and gougères, and it's light and eggy and just wonderful. Especially at this time of year with the weather warming up, I feel like this is the time of year for like baby showers and bridal showers and, you know, brunches and luncheons, and this is a great thing if you know how to make choux pastry. You can do so many different things with it. You can have a cream puff party with like different fillings and toppings. I actually have a post on bakingamoment.com all about how to throw a cream puff party, with suggestions for like different fillings and toppings and things like that. You can make a really delicious appetizer with this choux pastry where you just fold in some shredded cheese. Oh, that's my, I didn't know what that noise was. It's a hot plate. It's talking to us. It's letting us know that it's getting warm here. So anyway, yeah, you just fold some shredded cheese into your choux pastry before it's cooked, obviously, and bake them up as usual. And they make these amazing little cheese puffs. You can use any kind of cheese. You can use like a sharp cheddar. I think traditionally gougere are made with Gruyere. My son's over here. He's homesick from school today. He's grabbing himself a snack. Yeah, so Gruyere I think is traditionally what's used, but I've actually used a few different kinds of cheeses when making gougere, and it always tastes amazing. They're a really delicious appetizer. You can throw some herbs in there too to kind of jazz them up. So that's a really great way to use choux pastry. And then eclairs, they're usually filled with pastry cream. They're piped in a long, like line shape, like about 5 or 6 inches long. You pipe them in a line, you bake them up, and then you fill them with pastry cream and glaze them with chocolate, and they are just like such a treat. They're so amazing. They're so incredible. And there's a recipe for classic eclairs on bakingamoment.com too. So if you're looking for any of these recipes, just go to the tippy top of the home page, and there's a search window right there, so you can enter in cream puff party, cream puffs, eclairs, whatever you're looking for. You could just enter in choux and like everything would come up. It's spelled CHOUX. So if you're looking for choux recipes, CHOUX. So that's that'll give you some really great ideas. So I don't know if you guys can see really well into my pot, but my water is steamy and my butter is melting. It's looking really good. I'm going to give it a stir just to try and help things along. And the next step is just as crazy as the first step was. We're going to take this flour. I have a cup of all-purpose flour here, and we're just going to dump it right in, which is weird. It's just all so weird, right? Like throwing flour into hot water. It's not something that you would normally do in baking, but somehow it works. Okay, so my butter's all melted. It's all incorporated. The sugar and the salt have dissolved with the liquid as well. So it's time to add the flour. And you can see this moves along really quickly. It's not a hard recipe to make at all. Despite the fancy sounding name, it's pretty simple. So in goes my flour. And at first it looks like a mess. Can you guys see in the pot? I mean, it just looks like I'm making glue or something here. I'm gonna actually cut the heat just because I know that it's gonna stay hot for a good long time here. And I'm just mixing it all together, and it starts out looking really lumpy and gross, and you're gonna think like, oh my God, I did it wrong. I did something wrong, I screwed it up. But you didn't. This is how it always goes. It starts out really lumpy, and then you just keep stirring. You can stir it pretty vigorously. It can handle it. And the lumps will they'll dissipate, they'll dissolve, and it sort of wants to gather itself into a ball almost. And you just keep it going. Yeah, now see, it's really trying to like glob up into one big ball. You want to just keep it cooking on the heat for a minute or so, just to kind of cook out the rawness of the flour. And you'll start to see it'll form a little bit of a film on the bottom of your pot. And if you see that, you know you're doing it right. So I'm getting that film. And my dough has kind of all come together in a ball. It does not want to separate. It wants to stick together in a big glob here. So this is good. This is looking good. This is exactly how it's supposed to look. I'm going to hold it up so you can get a better view. Everybody see that big glob of, looks like glue or something, paste? That's what you want. So, oops, I'm being sloppy here. I'm going to move this out of the way because I don't want to accidentally burn myself. This thing gets super hot. All right, I got a little on my counter. Nobody saw that, right?
Nope.
The counter was clean, I promise. All right, so now I have my mixer, and you don't have to use a stand mixer for this, but I like it. I think it makes life a little bit easier, but you could do the rest by hand if you just want to whisk it. Just use some elbow grease, that'll work just fine. But I have a stand mixer. I love using it, so. So it goes into the mixer, and we're almost done here already. I'm gonna start the mixer on just a low speed. And we have 4 eggs. And we're gonna add them in one at a time. And we're not gonna add the next one in until the first one is completely incorporated. Completely incorporated, okay? And it's gonna look like, at first it's gonna look really weird. It's gonna look like it's separated or like it's curdled or something. Can you guys see what it's doing right now? It looks like it's separated, but you just be patient, I promise. It's doing what it's supposed to do. So do we have any questions or anything so far?
Trudy from Facebook who was asking about suggested flavorings, which I assume,
Yeah.
will come at the end, but
Yeah, well, I mean,
good suggestions.
the
as far as-
options are really limitless as far as filling. I mean, the choux pastry, the only way I've really ever seen the choux pastry flavored is with cheese, which we talked about at the beginning. You probably could do a chocolate version, although I haven't tinkered around and experimented enough to figure out exactly like how much cocoa powder or whatever you should add. But most of the time, the flavor comes from the filling. So you could just do whipped cream, would be lovely, simple and just perfect. You could do what's called diplomat cream, which is the way my grandmother always made cream puffs, and she was famous for her cream puffs. Diplomat cream is just you take your pastry cream and your whipped cream and you fold them together. So it's richer than just plain whipped cream, but it's lighter and airier than plain pastry cream. So that's definitely my favorite way to do it. And then you could do, like I have a mocha version on my website, mocha cream puffs, that's delicious. Like I mentioned, we did a cream puff party for Mother's Day a few years ago, where it was like a tea party, and we had all the cream puff shells set out with like the different fillings and toppings. So we put out strawberries and chocolate syrup and caramel sauce and bananas and nuts and things like that. So everybody could kind of customize and make their own cream puff flavor combination. So that's a really fun thing to do. If anybody else has any ideas for how they like to fill their cream puffs or eclairs, I would love to hear it. Drop it in a comment and let's chat. Let's talk about different cream puff options. So I'm on my last egg now. This is the last one. And I'm just waiting for this to come back together again because it still looks a little like separated. It looks like there's pieces of dough that are like slicked with egg, and I want it to look like it's all completely incorporated. So there it goes. It only took a second. That looks good. And then the last egg's gonna go in, and once that's fully incorporated, we're gonna notice that the dough starts to look, well, it's yellower from the egg yolk, but it's also gonna take on sort of like a stretchy quality, which, again, that's what you're looking for. That's exactly what you want. We're almost there. Anybody else have a question, Jen?
Actually, there was a question, and another user on Instagram actually just answered it.
Okay.
Someone wanted to know if we could make a rose-flavored choux.
Ooh.
Would you use rose water to the dough or use rose extract? And the answer that was given was someone uses rose syrup with icing sugar as topping for a rose-flavored choux.
That sounds
Which
delicious.
sounds really fabulous.
Thank you. Thank you for that great answer and for the great question, too. I love that idea. That sounds just lovely. I love floral flavored desserts, especially at this time of year. There's just something about them that's feels so right for spring.
Yeah, absolutely.
So if you're trying to think of other kinds of floral flavors that could be used. Rose is definitely a favorite, especially around Mother's Day. I feel like it just works. I keep rose water in my cupboard. It's a great thing to have on hand. And I also really love orange blossom water, or orange flower water it's sometimes called. And we grow lavender in our garden, so that's a really nice thing to add to things as well, to add to desserts. It goes really well with lemon, so maybe, you know, you could do like, I'm just like off the top of my head coming up with ideas, but you could do like a lemon filling. You could combine whipped cream and lemon curd and fill your cream puffs with that, and then do like the Instagram user suggested and make a little lavender icing to go on top. That would be so delicious. I'm giving myself all kinds of ideas here.
While you're still working with the dough,
Yes,
Facebook user Chris wanted to know if you should let the dough cool a little so it doesn't cook the egg as you're adding them.
No, you want it to cook the egg. That's a really great question. You actually want it to cook the egg a little bit, and that's exactly how it's meant to be done. So, hope that answers your question. Now I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna transfer this batter into my piping bag. I'm using a 16-inch featherweight bag. These bags I really like because they clean up really nicely. They're made of like a nylon, like a thin nylon. And when you buy it, it's gonna almost come to a point, and you need to snip the end off to make room for the tip. And I am using an Open Star tip today, which is, I looked at it before we started, but I already forgot. It's a 1M. This is probably my favorite tip to use for just about anything. I just like the shape that it creates. But you could also just use a jumbo round tip, or you could use like a French Star tip, which is pretty similar, but the zigzags are much smaller and closer together. And I forgot to show you, I actually have some puffs over here already made. This is how they come out looking. So they are nice and tall and nice and brown on the top, and very light. They're hollow inside. They puff up with steam in the oven, and they almost hollow out completely. So when I made these, I used the same Open Star tip, and I really like the way they came out. So we're gonna do it that way again today. So I'm just gonna take this batter, and the batter's still warm. That's okay. If you want to let it cool, you can, but it's not so hot that it can't be handled. So this is how I like to fill bags. I have talked about this before on lives, but when I started out as a cake decorator, I was taught by a gal who was getting ready to go out on maternity leave. She had like a week to teach me everything that she knew. So this is one of the first things she taught me, to take the pastry bag and to turn it inside out over your hand. And then just scoop the batter or icing, whatever it is that you're piping, just scoop it right into your hand. And it's really easy, and it's kind of mess-free, because don't you just hate it when you go to pipe something and there's all kinds of gunk around the top of the bag and it's getting all over your hands? I know I do. So this kind of avoids that problem. You get it way down in there. And I should have said too that I probably don't need it because this batter's so stiff, but most of the time whenever I'm getting ready to pipe anything, like last week we did French macarons, and if the batter or the icing or whatever it is kind of runny, it'll sometimes run right out through your tip as you're filling the bag, which is a mess. So I just like clip it with a little clothespin just to keep it from doing that while I'm filling, and then when I'm ready to start piping, I release it and pipe away. So this 16-inch bag gives you plenty of room to get all your choux pastry in there. So that's why another reason why I like 16-inch piping bags. They hold a lot. Any other questions, Jen?
Let's see. LeafX on Instagram wants to know about your pastry cream recipe, which is just on bakingmoment.com. Search for pastry cream.
Yep.
There's a how-to and video will be right there.
Yep, there's a video so you can see how it works step by step. So definitely
And
check that out.
someone else had an idea, the person that was asking about the rose water, had an idea about, oh my gosh, my Instagram feed is like all kinds of messed up today, so I'm like trying to work different,
That's okay.
different things. They were saying they had thought of making it with white chocolate topping.
Oh, that sounds great.
So yeah, that sounded really good too.
That does sound delicious. I would just caution, I don't know if this is what you meant or not, but if you wanted to do like a rose scented white chocolate ganache, just be careful because that water could actually seize the chocolate. So just watch out for that. You might be better off with like a rose oil or something if you want to flavor a chocolate ganache that way. But maybe that's not even what you meant anyway. I just wanted to quickly show you guys that like even though like my bag is really, really full, and if I were trying to pipe it this way, it would be a little awkward. It's a little hard on your hands to squeeze all that. So this is another thing that I learned early on is like just pinch your bag. Keep like extra at the top here and just keep what you can easily handle towards the bottom of the bag, and that'll just be a little more comfortable to use it that way. And I am, as I'm piping, I'm kind of swirling around like an ice cream cone almost. I just like the way that that looks, but you can do it however you like. You don't have to do it that way. If you want, you can just like build up like a nice little ball of pâte à choux. That'll work fine. But it will, this shape will hold up pretty well during the baking process. So whatever you pipe, it will come out looking somewhat like, I say somewhat because they puff up so much, but they do stay pretty true as far as the shape goes. So I would say I'm probably piping about 2 to 3 tablespoons of dough for each little puff. And I've almost got one tray done here, so you can see how fast this moves. All right, and when you release the bag away from the tray that you're piping it on, it tends to make a point because that dough is so stretchy. It'll stretch, and then as it breaks away, it'll leave you with like a little point. So if that goes into the oven like that, it's gonna burn. The tip is gonna burn just because it's exposed to so much more heat. So I'm just gonna put a little water in this bowl real quick. And this is what you wanna do. You just wanna wet your fingertip. Just get your fingertip a little bit wet and just pat down the point a little bit so that that doesn't burn. And these can be piped in any shape or size you want. It's up to you. The smaller they are, the less time they'll need in the oven, and the larger they are, obviously, they'll need more time to bake. But I did these little swirly shapes here for cream puffs. If you wanted to do eclairs, you just pipe it in a line about 4 to 6 inches long, depending how big you want them to come out. It's really versatile. The options are limitless, and I can remember as a small child, I used to like to read cookbooks, which is so nerdy, I know, but I would go through my mom's cookbooks, and she had a book by Jacques Pepin, who I actually got to meet a few years ago, and it was like such a crazy moment. Like, it was such a full circle moment. I actually got really emotional, made a fool out of myself, and burst out crying. But I was remembering like looking at his books as a little kid and being so amazed by him, you know, and he inspired me so much. And now I'm a mom and I'm thinking like, oh my gosh, yeah. It was weird. I can't even explain it. I was probably hormonal or something, but it made me cry to meet him. But anyway, I'm totally getting off track here. I can remember looking at him making cream puffs in the shape of swans, and he would pipe like the regular cream puff for the body of the swan, and then he would pipe a little like curved S for the head of the swan, and somehow he put wings on it. I don't even remember how he did that. But, you know, he would fill it, and he would stick the little S-curve head on top, and it looked just like a beautiful swan, and it was just like, oh my God, this guy's a genius. Like, I'd never seen anything like it before, and I loved it. So that just goes to show you like how versatile this pastry is and how much fun it is to get creative with it. So I forget, Jen, how long are these supposed to bake, or does it not even say? It might not even say.
It gives a pretty big range.
Okay.
You're at 425, just in case anybody doesn't have the recipe right in front of them. But it does say the bake time can range from 20 to 40 minutes, depending on the size.
Okay, well, I'm going to set my timer for 20, and we'll take a look. And that was actually something that I wanted to talk about a little bit, is the bake time, because I think a lot of people who have tried making cream puffs or choux pastry of any kind, if they've run into problems, it's probably because they didn't bake it long enough. And what happens is, and we talked about this before, like I think it was last week or it might have been the week before, with baking cakes and macarons and things like that, like they might look like they're done on the outside, but on the inside it's still kind of wet, and so it hasn't like secured that structure enough to where, you know, once it's no longer in the oven and no longer like expanded with heat, that it'll stay that way. And especially with choux pastry, because what's happening is it's similar to what happens with puff pastry or something like that, where it forms steam inside. It's got like this big hollow, it's like a balloon almost of steam when it's in the oven. And when that steam dissipates, if the structure on the outside is not firm, then the whole thing will just cave right in. It'll deflate, just like a balloon. It'll just, you know. And I've talked to people who have said, like, oh, I tried making cream puffs and they just flattened right out. Well, it's probably because you should have baked them a little bit longer. So, and I'm piping these kind of big, so they're probably going to need closer to that 40-minute estimate there. I'll pipe these a little bit smaller, so hopefully we don't have to wait so long for them. But yeah, so pay attention as you're baking them. Make sure they're really, truly done. They're gonna start to look brown on the outside pretty quickly. They're gonna get like a nice golden brown sheen on them, but you want them to be really brown. Really, really brown. Like, look at how brown this one is. Here, let me grab this one. See how brown that is? Like, it's quite brown on the top. And you're also gonna wanna look, because you'll see as it's baking, it'll look like it's puffed up and it'll look like it's getting golden brown, but you might see some moisture. Like, it might just be kind of glistening a little bit in the little crevices, and that is a sure sign too that it's not done. You want them to be really dry, really light, and really, really brown. So, any other questions?
Dave wants to know how the pork shoulder's doing.
All right, I got caught red-handed.
It just popped up too. That was perfect timing. Actually, there are a couple of things though. I've got a couple of folks asking some things about storage and shelf life and all of that, but I do have one question I think maybe to address before that.
Okay.
Which would have to do with the piping. Chris from Facebook wants to know if these would be good for, and I'm probably going to butcher this term, croquembouche.
Oh,
yes. Like a cream
yes.
pastry for like caramel and sugars. And she wants to know if this would be a good recipe for that.
It's a perfect recipe for that. And I don't know if this is the same user. This might be the same user that I spoke with this morning, because I actually posted on my Instagram feed yesterday mocha cream puffs, and someone asked, it might be the same person, can I use this recipe for croquembouche? And the answer is 100% yes. This is exactly what you want to use for croquembouche. If you guys don't know what croquembouche is, it's basically like a cream puff tower. It's so impressive looking. So you take your cream puffs, you know, they're all filled.
Oh, I know.
You've
the
seen
ones
it?
that like stack up like
Yes.
a tree, like a big huge
Stack
thing.
it up like a big tall pyramid, like a big tall cone, and they're kind of glued together with caramelized sugar. So you just cook the sugar until it's like, you know, I would say it's probably, without looking at a recipe, I'm guessing it's probably like hard crack stage. So it's like hard candy almost. And you dip your cream puff in and you set it down, and then when you put the next cream puff on top, it like glues them together. And then at the end, they'll take the sugar and they'll like make like a like a bird's nest of spun sugar all around, and the thing is like so magnificent. It's unforgettable. When you see it, you'll never forget it because it's a masterpiece. So yes, definitely use this recipe to make croquembouche. And if you do, will you tag me? Will you put it on Instagram and tag me? Because I want to see it. I have never made croquembouche. I know what it is, but I've never attempted it. And I want to see it. If you're that good, I got to see it. I got to call you out and praise you for it.
Definitely.
So these I piped a little bit smaller. Hopefully they won't take quite as long. But I think those were probably like 2 to 3 tablespoons of batter for each puff. And this is probably closer to 2. So with that in mind, I got exactly 2 dozen puffs out of that batch. So that'll give you an idea of like whether you should double the batch or, you know, whatever. You could have the batch too if you just wanted a really small batch. That would work just fine. So I'm just gonna put these behind here while we wait. We've got quite a bit of time. So I should tell you guys what the pork roast thing was all about, because I'm sure you're probably wondering. So this morning, we had company coming tonight. My brother-in-law's coming in from out of town with my niece and nephew. And so my husband does most of the cooking around our house. So I said, you know, my brother-in-law's coming and he's bringing the kids. I don't know if you had a plan for dinner tonight, but is there anything that we could have that, you know, we have enough to feed the extra people? And he was like, oh yeah, I have this pork roast. I was gonna make it on Sunday, but I'll make it today. Do you need the oven today? And I was like, no, not at all. No, I don't need the oven. What would I need the oven for, right? So he put it in this morning, and it was baking all morning on a really low temperature. He loves to cook stuff like low and slow. And then all of a sudden, as I'm getting ready for this, it dawned on me, like, I need to bake my cream puffs for my live today. What was I thinking? So I thought I could be all sneaky and take it out of the oven for like a half an hour and he wouldn't notice. But of course, he decided to tune in today. And he's probably like, where's my pork roast? What happened to my pork roast? I can't get away with anything around here, I'll tell you. So that's what that was, if you guys are wondering. We're having pork roast for dinner tonight, and it smells fantastic. It's like garlic and herbs, and I mean, it's like Italian roast pork, which is a big Philly thing, so can't wait to eat tonight. It's going to be good. So is there any other questions I should address now, or should I talk about the shelf life and that sort of thing?
You can definitely, whatever order you want to do it in, it doesn't matter.
All right, well, since I brought it up, we may as well go there, right?
Perfect.
So this is another great thing, is they keep for a really long time. When I used to be a pastry chef, I used to make a big batch at the beginning of the week, and actually, I don't even know if I had to do it every week. I probably did, because we had so many people to serve. But I would make them, I would let them cool down completely, and then I would throw them in a plastic bag and into the freezer, and I would just have like huge bags of baked cream puffs. And then, you know, the day before the party and when we were prepping everything, I would get them out, let them come to room temperature, and fill them on a tray, and then refrigerate them until service time. So it worked great for that, and that's actually, I took these out of my freezer. I had these in a baggie in my freezer. They were already pre-baked and ready to go. They come up to room temperature really quickly. They probably don't need more than an hour at room temperature before they're ready to go. And you could slice it open and fill it even while it's still cold, and it'd be totally fine. So this is one that I cut open. This one didn't hollow out as much as they usually do, but you can see there is like a little bit of a hollow there. So what I would do is I would take my filling and I would fill it up like high, because I like to be generous. I like when things look abundant. I feel like it's more appetizing that way. So I would fill that up like up to here. Let me get closer. I would fill that way up. I would like pile that filling in there and then just set the top right on top, and then give it a dusting of powdered sugar or chocolate syrup or caramel sauce or whatever flavor direction you want to go in. But that's how I would do it. Let me see if I can cut another one open, and maybe it's got a little bit better of a hollow in it for you to see. But yeah, did I answer that question well enough for you guys? Yeah, so this one you can see more. It's almost like a little bowl inside. It's just a perfect little hidey hole for whatever you want to put in there.
Just yumminess.
Yes, yes. And like I said at the beginning, I love when you take a bite of a cream puff or an eclair and the pastry is kind of like a little bit chewy, a little bit crisp. It's got like a firmness to it. And then that filling is so soft and light and airy. It's that contrast to me that makes them so much fun to eat. So definitely give them a try. So what other questions do we have?
How long does it last without getting soft was one of the other questions.
Okay. Yeah, it probably depends on your filling, but I mean, most times you're using a pretty wet filling. So I would say I probably wouldn't let it sit with the filling for more than a few hours. But you can make everything else ahead. You can make your fillings ahead usually and keep them refrigerated. And you can obviously make these like way in advance and keep them in your freezer. And then when your guests are ready to come over, all you have to do is just throw the filling into the puffs and give them a quick garnish and you're ready to go. So it's not too labor intensive for you. I know how that can be when you have people coming over and there's so much to do and so much like, besides just the dessert, I mean, there's all the other dishes that you're serving and you want your house to be clean and you want your kids to be clean and dressed nice, so it's a lot of pressure. I'll take a shortcut wherever I can get it. This is a good one.
Actually, shortcuts would be a perfect segue, but there was another question about shoe flavoring.
Yeah.
Trudy, who unfortunately had to leave.
Oh, sorry, Trudy.
But she wanted to know if you could mix in lavender.
Yeah.
Kind of a lavender shoe.
I think you probably could. I can't think of any reason why that wouldn't work. Let's see, how would I do that? I would probably put the dried lavender flowers into a little sachet, like I would make a little bouquet garni almost with cheesecloth, and just cut a little square of cheesecloth and put some dried lavender flowers in there and then tie it up with butcher's string and throw that into your water, butter, sugar, salt mixture and sort of steep it like a tea almost. And then add in your flour and do everything else as normal, and that would be just amazing. That sounds lovely. You can make that for me anytime. I won't say no. Yeah, so that's probably the best way to do it. And I've done similar kinds of things with other recipes I've worked on too, where you just like sort of steep the flavor into the water or into the butter even. I made this is going to sound crazy, but it was so good. And I keep meaning to go back and redo the post again because the photos didn't come out that great. It didn't do it justice, but I made a buttered popcorn creme brulee. So you take when you make creme brulee, it always starts out with the hot cream. So I heated the cream and I added like popped buttered popcorn to the cream and let it like soak, like let it steep like a tea before whisking it into the eggs and the sugar and all that. And it was amazing. It tasted so good. It was one of those things, like if you saw it on a restaurant menu, you'd almost like have to order it just because you'd be so curious. But it actually, it really was amazing. One of these days I'm gonna redo that post. But yeah, you can add flavors to things in that way and it usually works really well. I have never had it fail. I also made once madeleines and I steeped the butter with Earl Grey tea. So they were Earl Grey madeleines and they came out really well. That worked really well for that. So keeping that like tea steeping idea in mind is a good way to get flavor into things that don't normally have flavor in them. Any other questions?
We do have other questions, not necessarily related to shoe.
That's okay. Yeah, I was going to suggest if you had other baking questions, throw them out.
We have an Instagram user that wants to know if you have an easy or shortcut way to make croissants.
I don't have a shortcut way, but I mean, I should probably get in the kitchen and play around. So, was it last week that we did pie crust? I did do a live for pie crust like a week or two ago, I think.
Yeah, I was going to say it was within the last 2 weeks.
So the way that I make my pie crust, and if you guys are interested in clicking over, just search pie crust, or actually it's right on the home page. It was just 2 days ago that the post got updated and sent out again. The way that I make my pie crust is kind of similar to the way a croissant dough would be made or a puff pastry would be made. I like to laminate the dough, which is just an extra step where you kind of fold the dough a few times and then roll it out, and it creates those flaky layers like you see with a croissant. So if I were going to go into the kitchen and try to come up with a shortcut croissant recipe, the first thing that I would try to do would be to eliminate that step of creating the butter square. So if you guys know anything about making croissants, you have to actually like construct this butter square, which would be like a thin sheet of butter that's probably starts out about a ½ inch thick, and it's probably about 12 inches by 12 inches. I don't know, I'm off the top of my head here. I'm not looking at a recipe. But yeah, so you make this big butter square and then you encase it in the dough, and then you roll it, fold it, roll it, fold it. So I would probably try to skip that step of the butter square by just throwing in like thin slices of butter into the dough and then rolling it and folding it that way, and just to see if it comes out anywhere close to what a croissant's supposed to look like. I mean, I probably would get killed by people for not doing it the authentic way, but that would probably be the first thing that I would try to do, is to get rid of that step to make it a little bit more simple. Again, I haven't tried it, so I don't know if it would even really work, but maybe if you feel like experimenting, start with that. Just throw in slices of butter into the dough, and then do the laminating from there and see how that works. Oh, I just got a low battery. That didn't last very long.
No.
The thing was fully charged before we started. There must be a lot of apps open on that phone. It's my son's phone, so I wouldn't be surprised if he had 1 million game apps open. But just to update you guys on these cream puffs, they're looking good. They've puffed up a lot in the oven. There's 3 minutes left on the timer, which I set it for 20 when we started. So there's 3 minutes left, and they are puffy. They are so, so puffy. But I can see that little bit of glistening shine. So I know they're definitely not done. And they don't look that brown yet. They look golden, but not brown. So these guys are probably going to get at least another 15 minutes in the oven. And I'm not going to open the oven. I'm not going to show you because I don't want them to sink. I don't know if they definitely would or not, but I don't like to take chances with these kinds of things, you know. So keep them in that heat, let them do their thing. Don't open the oven until they look like they can handle, like they're strong enough to handle if like the hot air suddenly whooshes out and you know, everything.
They all fall down.
Yeah, they all fall down. You don't want that. So tell me, you guys, what have you been baking lately? I want to hear all about it. What's been going on in your kitchens? I told you we have roast pork sitting over here. As soon as the cream puffs are done, the roast pork will go back in. But before the roast pork got started, I did pie crust this week. Today, there's a new post on bakingamoment.com. It just went out at 7 a.m. this morning, and it's classic tiramisu, which I hadn't had in such a long time. And when I cut into it to take the pictures, I just couldn't stop eating it. It's so yummy. It's so fluffy and soft and just you know, if you don't know what tiramisu is, it starts with like these really dry, crisp ladyfingers, and you soak them in a boozy coffee mixture, and then you layer them with this mascarpone mousse, and you let it sit overnight, and everything kind of melds together. All the flavors combine and marry and get friendly with each other, and the ladyfinger biscuits soften, and they just get like pillowy soft. So, you know, each bite, it's just like biting a cloud, but there's so much incredible flavor. It's got like this strong coffee, and it's got Marsala wine and the filling. And then there's a little bit of like liqueur in there, so you get that little warmth in the back of your throat. It was completely irresistible. And I told myself, like, I'm just gonna have a couple bites, but I couldn't stop. It was like one bite after another bite after another bite. It was so good. So tell me what you guys have been up to. Anybody made anything recently in the kitchen that they're really proud of? Let's hear it.
Yeah, we'll give them a chance to answer that one.
All right.
I do have a couple users, Mona from Instagram.
Hey, Mona.
And Rosie Bakes.
Hey, Rosie.
So Mona says her eclair shells very rarely come out with any hollowness in them.
Oh, really?
So, like, she's just wondering why that might be.
Well, I mean, I wonder how big. Maybe you need to pipe them a little bit bigger so they've got like a little bit more, you know, to expand. I don't know. I've honestly never baked an eclair that didn't. And you know what? Even if it's not like completely hollow inside, like you might see there might be like some areas where you can see that the batter kind of stretched, but it didn't completely release. Don't be afraid to like open that up a little bit. Like you can, with the cream puff, like when I sliced this open, it didn't look completely hollow. There was like here's an example. It looks almost like there's like this membrane, there's like this flap that was kind of in the way. Just push it. Just show it who's boss. Just push it right out of the way and create that little nest for your filling, and that should work. You can take, I've seen eclairs made a couple of different ways. I've seen where you just take, like, I have this special pastry tip that's sort of elongated. It's called a Bismarck tip. So it comes to a point like a normal tip would, but then it's kind of extended long. So that's what I used when I made my eclairs that are on my website right now. I filled the pastry bag with pastry cream, and I jammed the tip into one end of the eclair and just squeezed that filling on in. But I've also seen some beautiful eclairs, like in fancy pastry shops, where they slice the top of the eclair off. So they actually like lay it down on a cutting board and slice it in half, almost like a cream puff, and fill it that way, and then place the top back on. And that's a beautiful way to do it. So if you're not sure if they're hollow enough, maybe try doing it that way. And when you slice it, if it doesn't look hollow, just like, you know, push it around and make room for your filling. So hopefully that's a good answer, I hope. I'm gonna reset my timer here because I know these aren't done. So let's give it 10 more minutes. And look at that, we're coming up on an hour already. These things fly so fast. This happened last week too. Instagram only lets me have an hour live. So if these things aren't ready at that 1 hour mark and I have to say goodbye to the Instagram people and you really want to see them come out of the oven, just know that this is also happening on Facebook Live too. So if you want to see the end and it gets cut off, just go to facebook.com/bakingamoment and you can watch the end of the live that way. I hope it doesn't happen though. I hope these come out in time because I really want you guys to be able to see them. So did we have any other questions, Jen?
I did have another question. Rosie from Instagram, she had made peppermint meringues, but she said they came out flat. She had followed the recipe which she had, which was to place the oven at 250 and leave the oven door open, but they came out paper thin.
That's crazy. They came out thin. Okay, so first of all, I mean, I have made meringues and I've never heard where you leave the door open for the whole bake time. So that's a little unusual. I have a recipe for raspberry meringues on bakingamoment.com, and they also bake at like a super low temperature. It might even be less than 250. I forget. I'd have to go back and look. But, oh, I'm getting another error message. Sorry. Yes, I know there's no storage left on that. Anyway, yeah, maybe I want to check that one out and try that recipe instead. But just off the top of my head, I'm just trying to like help troubleshoot for you a little bit. I know that one thing that will really cause meringue to deflate is any kind of grease or oil that might be in your pastry bag or in your mixing bowl or even on your baking sheets. Did you by any chance pipe them or spoon them onto a Silpat? Or like one of those silicone baking mats? Because I noticed that those things, you can scrub them till kingdom come and they will not they'll still be greasy. Like no matter what you do, no matter what I do, like hot water, scrubby sponge, plenty of dish soap, they still come out greasy. So maybe if you were piping on a Silpat that had a lot of grease on it, maybe that just like caused your meringues to poop out. That would make a lot of sense. I usually like to use parchment for that reason, because those, I mean, as convenient as those silicone mats are, they really do hold on to a lot of grease. So at least with parchment paper, you get like a fresh sheet every time and you don't have to worry about stuff like that. I'm sorry that happened to you, Rosie. That's a real bummer after going to all that trouble. But yeah, check out the raspberry meringues on bakingamoment.com. And you know, they're obviously flavored with raspberry. They have raspberry preserves in them. So just leave out the raspberry and add a little peppermint extract instead and see if that maybe works any better for you. Who knows? Maybe it was a recipe thing, or maybe it was a grease thing, like I said. I don't know. Sorry, you got me stumped there. Any other questions?
Just some people giving some feedback on some things that they've been making.
Oh, let's hear it. Yeah.
I have Instagram user BMAQ, B-M-A-A-Q.
Hey, BMAQ.
They made a chocolate tart, but they didn't like their chocolate crust.
Okay.
They said, I think I have a problem with tart crusts in general, but it was so delicious. So.
Oh, well, anything chocolate. I mean, how bad can it be, right? But I'm happy you brought that up. I was just going through my list. I keep all my ideas in a little like blank book, and whenever I have an idea, I just like quick jot it down. So I always have ongoing lists of what I want to make when I have time to make it. And that way when I'm planning my calendar, I can just like fish stuff off of that list. So I don't know if you guys have noticed, but lately a lot of the recipes that I've been posting are pretty like basic kind of recipes. So I've been kind of on a kick with that lately, and that's something that I have on my list, is to share some just basic crust recipes. We did pie crust earlier this week, but I really want to do tart crust and graham cracker cup crust and Oreo cookie crust, like all the different crusts that you might want to use for whatever pies or tarts you're making for the spring. So, sorry the crust didn't work out, but keep your eyes peeled over the next few months and maybe I'll have a better pie crust, or a better tart crust recipe for you.
We had Robin, who recently made lemon bars and gingered lemon bars,
Ooh,
which sounds interesting.
Lemon and ginger go so great together. It's a match made in heaven. That sounds wonderful.
Rosie piped in with that, other than her meringue thing, which she also said she had heard the weather can sometimes affect
That's a good
the
point.
meringues.
That's a good point, and especially with the oven door open, like if it was a really soggy day, it might have let too much moisture into your oven. That could be.
Okay.
Yeah.
She also said she recently made blueberry bread pudding a few days ago for some neighbors because her family's never home. And she's baking today, maybe a cinnamon roll or a sticky bun.
Oh,
which
yum.
I think I'm coming her way.
Oh, yum. Sticky buns have been on my list for a long time, too. I'll make a quick recommendation for you guys. Have you ever heard of Craftsy.com? It's a website where you can take like online classes, and they have every kind of class you can imagine. And there's a lot of like cooking, baking, pastry kind of classes. I took one from, what is her name? Joanne? I can't think of her last name now. I'm embarrassed. But it's a brioche class. And this woman, Joanne, is known for her sticky buns. She's got a bakery up in New York, in Manhattan, called Flour. And she did like one of those throwdowns with Bobby Flay and totally kicked his butt. Like her sticky buns are so off the charts, like no one can even compete, and it's because she uses this brioche dough. So if you feel like checking it out, if you're interested in sticky buns, look up the brioche class on Craftsy.com and give that a watch, and I guarantee you'll have the best sticky buns anyone could ever make if you follow her recipe. So let me check the timer here. Just a few more minutes, and they're looking pretty good. They might be ready. They might be ready before this thing's over, so let's keep our fingers crossed. What else have you guys been baking?
I actually have a baking question.
Okay.
Joyce's Notes from Instagram wants wants to know how to keep chocolate chips to intersperse all throughout her cake instead of them sinking to the bottom.
Okay.
And why do her cakes fall?
Okay.
Which has been a very popular question the last couple
Maybe
of weeks.
I need to write a post on why cakes fall and just refer them into the bag. Okay, so the first question about the chocolate chips, I've got a couple of ideas for you. The first one being just pretty simple. Just take your chocolate chips before you add them to your cake batter and toss them in a little bit of flour. And that might help, and that works a lot too with like blueberries. If you're adding blueberries to cake, a lot of times recipes will recommend that you toss them in flour first. But the other thing that you want to think about too is like, what kind of a cake batter are you using, and is it a very loose kind of liquid cake batter, or is it a thicker cake batter? Because I think that a thicker cake batter would probably be better for that type of use than something that's really thin and drippy. And I am a big fan of thicker cake batters in general. So I would refer you to the recipe on my website that's called Even Simpler, More Perfect Vanilla Cupcakes. And it can be baked as a cake as well as cupcakes. It's a nice thick batter. If you put something in it, it's less likely to sink to the bottom. So give that a try, and also check out, I have a pound cake recipe. It's actually a lemon pound cake, but you could just leave the lemon out, because I'm sure you're probably not wanting like lemon and chocolate chip together, although maybe that would be good, I don't know. But try leave the lemon out, add vanilla extract instead, and you'll have a plain pound cake or a vanilla pound cake that you could mix your chocolate chips into, and that's a really nice thick heavy batter too, where the stuff won't drop to the bottom quite as much. I feel like there was something else I wanted to say. Oh yes, and another tip would be to use mini chocolate chips instead of the full-size chocolate chips, because they're smaller and lighter and less likely to fall. So, and then that was a two-part question, wasn't it? Oh, why cakes fall?
Chips.
Yeah.
And then why cakes fall, yeah.
Okay, so I think there's a few different reasons why cakes might fall. Check your leavening, check your baking powder, your baking soda, whichever you're using. Make sure they're not expired. Check your oven temperature. Get one of those little oven gauges that you can buy on the grocery store shelf. It like hooks onto the wire rack that's in your oven. Make sure that your oven temperature is true, because if your oven temperature is lower than what the oven is set for, then the cake won't bake right. And lastly, don't open the oven door. There's my timer. Don't open the oven door until the cake is like at least really pretty close to being fully baked. And then don't take the cake out of the oven. Don't just follow what the recipe direction says. Check for yourself. When you touch the cake, when you press the top, it should sink down and spring right back up again. If it sinks down and stays down, your cake's not done. And then take a toothpick and stick it into the thickest part of the cake, and if it comes out with batter on it, or if it comes out with a lot of crumbs looking kind of goopy, then your cake's not done. Bake it a little bit longer until it's really nice and fully cooked, because it's sort of like the cream puffs we were talking about at the beginning. If you take them out and it's got all that steam in there, but the structure's not really set, it's gonna sink as it cools. All the steam's gonna come out, and all those ingredients that were expanded from the heat are gonna shrink back down, and that's what you're gonna end up with. So let me just give this a quick
She
check
says she's
here.
guilty of opening the oven.
So maybe that's the culprit. Try not to open the oven until you're like really close to the end of the recommended baking time. That makes a difference. Okay, so I would probably give these a few more minutes just to be absolutely sure that they don't collapse, but I'm gonna live dangerously today.
Time crunch.
Yeah, I think these might be okay. Like I said, if I had more time, I would probably give them a little bit longer just to be sure, but this might be okay. So, as you can see, they're too hot to handle, but as you can see, whoops, they really puffed up a lot. Baking fail.
Throw them around.
They're like probably doubled in size. They're really light. Oh, I'm getting a warning from Instagram.
Yep.
Bye, Instagram people. hop over to Facebook so we can finish up together, okay? Yeah, they're at least doubled in size, and they're really dry, really light, and when you tap them, they sound hollow inside. So that's what you want. That's a good cream puff right there. And let me cut one open. This is probably dangerous to do while they're still hot, but I'm gonna do it anyway just so you guys can see. I'm just gonna slice the top off one. Oh my gosh. Steam burn. Yeah. So on the inside, there's like a little pocket in there, a little air pocket that's just perfect for filling with something delicious. So that's how they're meant to come out. So bye, Instagram people. Thanks for joining me today. I hope you make pas de choux. I hope this gave you the confidence that you needed. They're gone. Bye, everybody. So I'll just talk at the Facebook people now.
I just got cut off. Yep.
So is there any, let me turn that off. That's annoying. I'll put these in too, since it's
Might as well.
Yeah, so here, look at the difference, like before and after. Can you see how much bigger they get and browner? So anyway, is there any other questions I should answer before we sign off?
No, I think we caught up on everyone's questions that came in.
Okay, great.
So,
Well, you guys, if you think of anything after the fact that you want to ask me about, just drop it in a comment, because this video is going to be around forever. So I actually have a category, I have a playlist on the Facebook page under videos for all the lives, and I'm just keeping them all there just for reference. So anytime anybody wants to go back and watch again, or if you have if you tried something and you had a problem and you want to ask me about it, it's still there for you to comment on. And Jen and I really do our best to make sure we keep up with all those comments and answer your questions. You could also comment on the recipe post on bakingamoment.com. And I'll do my best to answer any questions that you have there as well. So the only other thing that I wanted to mention too, if anybody from Instagram did hop over, last week we were talking about, is there a way to save the lives for longer than 24 hours on Instagram? And somebody had a really great suggestion to save it to the phone and then upload it as a story, and then add it to the highlights. And at the time I was like, that's friggin' brilliant, I'm gonna try it. And then I realized that that doesn't work either, because stories can only be 15 seconds long. So womp womp. So much for that idea. I really don't think there's I'm like coming up against a brick wall. I just don't think there's a way to save those Instagram lives for more than 24 hours. But like I said, they're on Facebook forever. And actually, I've been downloading them from Facebook and adding them to the recipe posts too. So you can see them either on Facebook or on bakingamoment.com. So just, you know, go back and watch them whenever you want. And like I said, if you have a question, just pop it in there and I'll do my best. So thank you guys so much for clicking over and watching. It's so much fun doing this with you and being able to chat with you along the way. I hope you had as much fun as I did, and I hope you give this pas de choux recipe a try. Thanks and have a great weekend.